Hi everyone, I'm Tori and I'll be doing my presentation today on the Brandenburg versus Ohio case. If you hear a little bit of noise in the background, it's because it is raining here in Chicago and I have a skylight, so excuse that, and that's why it's a little dim in here as well. But the purpose of this this presentation is to show basically how the First Amendment was used in the case of Clarence Brandenburg. And back in the day, there have been so many limitations put on what could be said and what could be written about the government, and whatever they found to be seditious could, result in someone being put in jail and even having to pay some type of fee. And Brandenburg, he used his First Amendment rights to his advantage because he felt like he had the right, and he did have the right to say whatever he wanted because no harmful intentions was within his message. And basically the rest of this presentation will just give you a little bit of background information on Clarence Brandenburg and the case as a whole. But to go back a little bit in history, in 1904, the Supreme Court had its first freedom of speech case in the 20th century with a guy named John Turner. And John Turner had been denied admission to the United States because of his anarchist sympathies, and basically he felt that not allowing him to enter into the United States because of his beliefs was against the First Amendment and against his freedom of speech. And the court went against him with different claims, and there was no action required, but because of his anarchist views, because he was viewed as, he had so many different anarchist views, his tendencies were dangerous to the public because they felt that he would be undesirable to the population, basically saying that because of he had these anarchist views, that the way he views society would allow other people to feel like, oh, it's okay for him to think this way and say these things, so I'm going to feel the same way, which caused an uproar and riots and things like that during that time. And that's just something that they just didn't want to go through back in the day, especially during those times. So after that case, many more began to rise. There were so many different cases that came about right after John Turner not being admitted into the United States. And one of I'm sorry about that. After so many cases, after the war against Germany in 1917, the Espionage Act was passed. And basically the section that stuck out the most was Section 3, because it provided for the punishment of speech that had intent to interfere with the operation of the military, promote the success of the nation's enemies, attempt to cause insubordination, disloyalty, mutiny, or refusal of duty in the armed forces, or interfere with the draft. And if anybody was convicted of violating these things, they could be fined up to $10,000 and prison for up to 20 years, or either one of the two, or even both. So even after that Espionage Act was passed, many more cases began to develop, and then that's about the time when the Brandenburg versus Ohio case came about. And what happened was Clarence Brandenburg was leader of the Ku Klux Klan in Ohio, and he was convicted under the Ohio criminal syndicalism statute, basically it advocating the duty, necessity, or propriety of crime, sabotage, violence, or unlawful methods of terrorism as a means of accomplishing industrial or political reform, and for voluntary assembling within society, group, or assemblage of persons formed to teach or advocate the doctrines of criminal syndicalism. And all in all, what that's basically saying is that he came together with a group of people with harmful intentions. That is the way that they viewed it, that he assembled a group of men and he wanted to conduct violence. He wanted to sabotage and do all different type of unlawful things that would result in violence. So that was what his conviction was under the Ohio criminal syndicalism statute. But what happened with Brandenburg was he allowed a television crew to come and videotape the KKK meeting that was being taken place. And basically he did say a lot of slandering things towards the government as well as to different groups of people. He said he said derogatory statements towards Jews, African Americans, and others as well. One statement that he made was, "We're not a revenge organization, but if our president, our Congress, or our Supreme Court continue to suppress the white Caucasian race, it's possible that there might have to be some revenges taken." And that was just one statement out of many that was actually, said during that KKK meeting. And after that, once he invited the television crew, they used that as crucial evidence against him in the court. And the KKK, I'm sorry about that, I'm actually just looking at my notes, but the video footage was crucial to the evidence to the conviction under the Ohio Syndicalism Act, and the Supreme Court held that the First and the 14th Amendment protected speech advocating violence at a KKK rally because the speech did not call for imminent lawless action, or was it likely to immediately cause such action, basically saying that the First and the 14th Amendment protected the rights of the KKK to come together and have this meeting and talk violently at the meeting, because nothing seemed to go into immediate action. It didn't seem as if none of these things were going to actually take place. Even though he did talk, he had some derogatory statements towards African Americans, Jews, and even threats towards Congress. None of it seemed as if it was something that was going to be taken, action that was going to be taken immediately. So the court did rule in favor of Brandenburg, and it actually reversed a previous Supreme Court decision setting a new standard for the clear and present danger standard in the First Amendment case. And basically what that says is that the court now said that a person's words were protected as free speech as long as they did not directly incite unlawful action. And I actually have a few examples, or just a little background information on exactly what imminent lawless action is. Imminent lawless action is the test that permits speech to continue until it is likely to incite immediate lawless conduct. So that is why he was being able to let his case be dismissed. And it was after this case that the Brandenburg test was developed. And the Brandenburg test is basically is teaching or advocating unpopular ideas must be distinguished from teaching or advocating the duty, necessity. I'm sorry, I read that wrong. Brandenburg text merely teaching or advocating unpopular ideas must be distinguished from teaching or advocating the duty, necessity or propriety of acting on those beliefs. The right to speak and organize cannot be abridged, no matter if the group's message and purpose are repugnant to American values, such as the KKK speech that was delivered that Brandenburg delivered. And in order for the government to intervene, the speaker must subjectively intend incitement, which is imminent evil, use words which are likely to produce action, imminent action, and openly encourage or urge incitement, suggesting or to commit a crime. And that is all. This is found by the faculty ncw.edu. And basically, all in all, the Brandenburg test is another form of protection for the freedom of speech. So you're able to say anything that you want, whether it's violently or anything, unless it is caused to actually harm someone, harm a group of people. You have that tendency to actually act upon what it is that you are saying violently. And that is why this Brandenburg case is so significant, because it allowed the First Amendment to be used to its full potential. Brandenburg was going to be in prison for having spoken harshly at a meeting in which people found words to be threatening. And he was defended by the fact that he has the freedom of speech, and none of his violent words seemed to be anything that he was going to act upon. The case also is important because the constitutional guarantee of free speech does not permit a state to forbid advocacy of law violation except where such advocacy is likely to produce imminent lawless action. Basically, all that says is that the Constitution gives you, like I said before, gives you the freedom of speech to say whatever it is that you want until it's something that they feel will come, immediate action shall come from it. And I feel that the Brandenburg versus Ohio case, it touched based on a lot of constitutional principles. It touched on individual rights, the limits on rights, as well as some civic values such as courage, respect, and consideration. And it took a lot of courage, respect, and consideration for Brandenburg to even take this case and go along with it and, defend himself, saying that I didn't do anything wrong, nothing was done wrong, nothing was said wrong, and I do have that right to speak violently, but at the same time convict me only if my actions are displayed through what it is that I'm saying. And so that is why the Brandenburg versus Ohio case really stuck out, and it really it's a really good case to touch base on when it comes down to the First Amendment, because it really stretches the First Amendment to its full potential, and even after the case it allowed for more of a broader exception for freedom of speech as a whole. Thank you.